Imagine being a hardened criminal, only thinking you've gotten away with the crime, hunted down, not by the police, not by any detective, but by an elderly 50-plus-year-old woman who goes out of her way to track you down, interrogates all sorts of characters. She wears disguises, patiently hides out in cars and dodgy spaces. She's literally ready to lay her life on the line in order to track you down, just when you were least expecting it. Surprise, surprise. What the police couldn't do, she did it even better. She's a superhero of modern times, and yes, not all superheroes wear capes. Some of them dye their hair red instead. We're talking about Miriam Rodriguez Martinez, the lady who single-handedly tracked down her daughter's murderers. One by one, she brought them all to justice. If you haven't heard this extraordinary story before, here's your chance. Once upon a time, there was a lady named Miriam Rodriguez Martinez. She was born and raised in San Fernando, Tamaulipas, Mexico. This is a state known for being a hotspot for kidnappings in Mexico, and with a heavy presence of organized crime, with a heavy presence of cartels like the Gulf Cartel and the Los Zetas Cartel. They deal in drug trafficking, extortion, and kidnapping for ransoms. This area is at proximity to the US border, making it a transit point for drugs, migrants, and criminal activities. And due to very weak law enforcement, many crimes and kidnappings go unpunished, and this emboldens criminals to go on with these activities. Miriam Rodriguez had a 20-year-old daughter named Karen. Louis, Karen's older brother, had moved away to escape danger, but Karen remained to finish her education and also to help her mother with her small cowboy apparel shop called Rodeo Boots. Unfortunately, one day when Karen was driving and preparing to merge into traffic, two trucks pulled up on either side, stopping her. Armed men pulled up, forced their way into her truck, and took off with her. And that was to be the last time her family would see her alive. After her daughter Karen was abducted in 2012, she grew frustrated with police authorities and decided to launch her own investigations. She eventually discovered Karen's remains, and she also discovered information implicating the Los Zetas cartel. She stalked her daughter's murderers one by one across Mexico, armed with a fake gun, a fake ID, and disguises. Miriam Rodriguez was a one-woman detective squad, defying a system that she knew too well often allowed criminal impunity to prevail. Now, how did she achieve this? Let's dig a little bit deep. Let's look at the case of the florist. The florist was one of the criminal members. It had taken her a whole year, patiently, to track him down. She had been hunting him, stalking him online, interrogating his friends, the criminals he worked with. She even befriended his relatives, unsuspecting to them. She had also studied his photo closely in order to recognize him. Her breakthrough came when she received a call to tell her that he was now peddling flowers at the border. Without showering, she threw on a trench coat and put on a baseball cap. And with a gun in her purse, she headed over to the border to find the florist. She scoured the bridge for vendors of flowers, but on this day, he was actually selling sunglasses. She eventually recognized him. She got too excited and too close, he recognized her and ran. But guess what? She sprinted halfway across the bridge after him, and she grabbed him. She grabbed him by the shirt, wrestled him to the rails, and she put her gun on his back. "If you move, I'll shoot," she told him, according to family members who were with her that day. The police were called, and she held him there for nearly an hour, waiting for the police to arrive and make their arrest. Now, this florist was just one of the people that she had tracked down and apprehended. In all, she apprehended at least 10 criminal cartel members in a mad campaign for justice that made her famous but vulnerable. You see, since 2014, she'd been tracking down the criminals responsible for the murder of her 20-year-old daughter, Karen. And due to her relentless pursuit of them, at least half of them ended up in prison. Her efforts, not that of the police. This mature lady astounded the world. In order to effectively pursue the criminals, she had cut her hair, dyed it sharp red. She'd also devised several disguises, a pollster, a healthcare worker, and even as an election officer in order to get names and addresses. She made up excuses to meet their family members, unsuspecting grandmothers and cousins who gave her information. She wrote down every single little detail and stuffed it into her little black bag, building her investigation and tracking them one by one. She knew their habits, friends, family, hometown, childhood. Within 3 years, Mrs. Rodriguez captured almost every single member of the criminal gang that had captured her daughter, some of whom had even already started new lives. One was even a born-again Christian, captured in the church. And on the day of his capture, as he pleaded for his life, the church members pleaded along with him, but she asked, "How about my daughters, please?" Did he listen then? Another was a taxi man, another was a salesman, and one was even a babysitter. No one had previously challenged organized crime. No one had dared put their members in prison. Well, not until this superwoman, Miriam Rodriguez. Now listen to this. Miriam had traced one of her daughter's kidnappers through a call she had with him when her daughter was kidnapped, and he had been one of the people she had spoken to for a ransom which she had paid but had never gotten her daughter returned for. She heard someone call him Sama, and through this name she listened into, she traced him via friends and Facebook. Honestly, her stealth and her wisdom and cunning, it rivals any blockbuster Hollywood movie. In fact, she gives a lot of Hollywood superheroes a run for their money, because I don't know any who went as far as she did. Miriam became a social media sleuth, spending countless hours trawling Karen's Facebook page for clues and signs. And on one fine morning, she discovered a Facebook photo tagged with the name Sama. She recognized him immediately. And beside him was standing a woman who was wearing the uniform of an ice cream shop. Now she traced the ice cream shop. Now she stalked this shop for weeks until she learned the woman's hours by heart. She waited outside of the shop each shift until Sama showed. And then she followed the couple home to their marked address. But to force the police into action, she needed more than an address. She needed a name. And in order to do this, she needed to get real close. So this was when she dyed her hair red, so that Sama would not recognize her. And then she donned on an old uniform and posed as a health ministry worker. Thus, she spent half of her day conducting fake polls until she got more details of her daughter's capture. It wasn't easy and it took a while, but eventually she got this young man, Sama. Now, his arrest led to the crackdown of some others, one of whom was a young teenager who broke down and opened up and confessed, and he showed them where the bodies were. Now, one of the women that Miriam cracked down on, one of the criminals that she turned in, was surprisingly someone she knew from childhood. A young woman named Mrs. Betancourt, who it was discovered was one of the girlfriends of the criminal gang members. Now, this really infuriated Miriam because she knew this woman since she had been a little girl, and she had even given some of Karen's baby clothes to her when she was small. The police arrested her, and they found out that she was instrumental in beating up Karen while she was their captive. Now, during Miriam's relentless campaign for her daughter's murderers, her family and friends were worried for her life. But she wasn't. She said that the minute her daughter died, she died. And she was ready to lay her life down for this. Now, a month before Miriam Rodriguez was killed, she actually broke her ankle from running after one of her last pursuits, one of the criminals on her list, a woman that she had been tracing for a while, who had just begun work as a live-in nanny for her family. In order to capture her, Miriam spent days hiding out in a car beside this family's home. She stayed there, and she even urinated in cups just in order to stay there. Needless to say, Superwoman Miriam succeeded in getting this female criminal arrested eventually. However, in her pursuit, she broke her ankle and was wearing a cast and using crutches on the day that she was murdered, which was Mother's Day. Now, what happened was that a few days before Mother's Day, some criminals had managed to escape a prison in Mexico, some of whom were the angry criminals that Miriam Rodriguez had captured. A hit was put on her and she was shut down in front of her house on Mother's Day. Now, the criminals might think that it was ironic and they may think that they were sending out a severe message by gunning her down on Mother's Day, as a mother who had gone all out to launch a campaign against them based on her murdered and kidnapped daughter. However, in my opinion, and internationally, they just made a martyr of her. Her death on Mother's Day is quite symbolic, because you can choose to look at it in a positive way. She was reunited with her daughter, her beloved daughter, on Mother's Day. The angels needed her up there on Mother's Day. So in my books, that's another triumph for her. She's the superhero mother who lived and died for justice and joined her daughter and the angels in heaven on Mother's Day. And her work was not in vain. Long before her death, she had established an association for families whose family members had been kidnapped or murdered. And she had moved the society, her community, and the country to stand up and act and speak out and fight against the violence in their communities, leading to the capture of more criminals, securing the life of more community members. Miriam Rodriguez is now seen as a patron saint of Mother's Day, one of the most original and unique superheroes of our time and an inspiration to all.